Welcome, everyone, to the third in our series of 5 presentations on microfinance. I am Carl Trelevin, the president of the Rotary Action Group for Community Economic Development. Normally, I come to you from St. Petersburg, Florida, in the USA. However, today I am in Eastern India working on a Rotary Global Grant. But we can do webinars from pretty much anywhere, given the nature of Zoom and other programs. So we'd like to begin this. Gomith, if you could advance the slide. So this session, number 3, is focused on different types of microfinance models. Next. But before we get into that, I would like to spend a few moments just to talk about the Rotary Action Group for Community Economic Development, given that some of you may not be very familiar with who we are and what we do. So RAGCED, we're known as RAGCED, the Action Group for Community Economic Development. We're one of 25 Rotary Action Groups. And our focus, as you would expect, is on the Rotary Foundation's economic development area of focus. And as we see on this slide, we say we are a source of knowledge and expertise to help Rotarians plan, implement, and manage impactful and sustainable economic development projects. Obviously, the key words impactful and sustainable. And of the projects that we do, our goal is to make sure that they create lasting change in poor and underserved communities. That is truly what we're about. Next slide, please. So overall, you're probably familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. There are a bunch of them, but we're focused on number 1, which is the elimination of poverty in all forms everywhere. How do we go about doing this? Well, there are a lot of strategies. We at RAGCED believe a very fundamental one is job and business creation. Because if we can create, good jobs for people and we can create good businesses that are truly sustainable, many other problems will take care of themselves. Next slide, please. So this is the thing that we're working on, which is ultimately in partnership with the Rotary Foundation, is to try and help strengthen local entrepreneurs, community leaders, and especially women in these impoverished communities. We find focusing attention on women is truly an important thing. And we're providing training through our projects to well-paying jobs and financial management institutions. So hopefully, in the work that we do, we're going to help individuals and communities both thrive financially and socially. Next slide, please. How do we go about doing this? Well, we're focused on 6 different areas here. And what we refer to these as the 6 pillars of community economic development. And these are the ones you see listed here. And that is involving assessment of projects, and in particular, the provision of education, helping people find sources of capital, providing mentoring, providing networking, and ultimately, when projects are done, evaluation of their success. So these are the 6 key things. And if Gomith, you'll advance the next slide. We work in a range of different areas. We're probably best known for microfinance. And in fact, that used to be the area of focus, really what we did. But in fact, we have branched out far beyond microfinance. And in fact, if anything, we have 5 broad areas now as represented in this slide. Vocational training and scholarships are a very key thing that we're doing now. Agricultural development, helping the development of enterprises, finance in various forms, particularly microfinance, and also village savings and loan associations, and a program called Adopt a Village. We're doing some other things, but these are truly the key things that we're working on, each one focused on some aspect of economic development. And With all these things, as we say here, we can create opportunities to help individuals and communities thrive financially and socially. Next slide, please. So what are the ways we can help you? I showed you in an earlier slide what we call the 6 pillars. This works out into these types of activities. And these are things that we offer to Rotarians and Rotary clubs and Rotaractors all over the world. Expert advice, needs assessment. As you know, for global grants, needs assessment is a critical area. Helping you find project partners. Oftentimes you've got a great idea, you don't know where to find a good partner. We can help you with it. We also have a range of case studies that can be useful to you in determining how to actually structure your project. Many Rotary clubs and Rotarians have great ideas. They're ready to go. They're lacking funding sources. That's something we can help you with too. Training and education in different aspects of the projects we do, obviously very important. A range of best practices. Given the fact that we see so many different types of projects out there, we have a good sense of the best practices out there, and we are very happy to share them with you. Community outreach, and finally, project evaluation. So these are the areas that we can help you with your economic development projects. Next slide, please. So as we said, this is a series of 5 different webinars. This is number 3. The next 2 will come. The next one, 4, will be April 11th. And the last one will be May 9th. So please mark your calendars. You'll receive an opportunity to register for these fairly soon. So be watching for that. Next slide, please. So let's now get into session number 3. And the objectives here, as we see, are to prevent several different microfinance models and projects and help describe regional variations. Many people talk to us and say, you know, microfinance comes in different flavors. It's done in different ways around the world. We appreciate that. And our speakers today are going to address some of the different ways that it is done. Next, please. So our first speaker is Jim Ludet, who's a past district governor from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. He's also a past RAGCED president. We also have Dan Murray, who's the president of Opportunity International in Canada. Margaret Williamson, who is also a past president of RAGCED from the Rotary Club of Detroit. And finally, working with her is Bob Zokowski, also from the Rotary Club of Detroit. So Jim, at this point, I want to turn it over to you for your presentation.
Jim, you're on mute.
Sorry, I just realized I was on mute. Sorry, I was muted. So I apologize for that. So again, thank you very much, Carl. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So for the first half of this webinar, Dan Murray and I will introduce him more formally in a bit. So we'll speak about the various methodologies of microcredit in the developing world. Okay. A little trouble there moving the slides. So what are the types of lending methods that are used in various countries? They can include group lending, and Carl mentioned this as well, group lending, individual lending, or small and medium enterprises, or as we call SMEs. So for this portion of the presentation, I'm going to focus on group lending. So my first example is a microcredit program for farmers in Mubende, Uganda. This project has been building on its successes for the past 17 years and is sponsored by the Abington Vesper Rotary Club. It continues to bring in farmers wanting to join and participate in training seminars held on a regular basis. And you can see the number of farmers that are participating in a training seminar on the right side of the screen. The farmers joining the project can receive an interest-free 3-year loan. The loan is combined with training in bookkeeping and sustainable organic agriculture and is taught by a key farmer trainer. The project fulfills a very real need, as it is impossible for ordinary small-scale farmers in Uganda to escape the cycle of poverty with the kind of training and loans the project provides. As part of this project, the farmers are encouraged to use their business profits for education. That's education for their children, mosquito nets, water filters, water harvesting, and other farm and home improvements. From the beginning of the microcredit multi-year project in 2007, the project has provided loans to 150 farmer groups with a total of about 4,100 members. Counting the members of the family unit, approximately 35,000 people have directly benefited from this project. So I want to give you an example, and it's Susan, who you can see on the right side of the screen. She first borrowed 200,000 Ugandan shillings, which you can equate that to about $51 US. She bought a calf and then sold it for 500,000 shillings, which is about $128. From the proceeds, she paid off her loan, she bought land, and paid for her school fees. Susan then got a second loan and again bought a calf. She then needed money for a hospital, so she sold a second calf she sold it early for 400,000 shillings, about 102 US, but kept enough to purchase a third calf. Now this calf was worth almost 450,000 shillings, or about US $116. So what has Susan learned here? Well, first, she's learned how to plan properly. And because of what she has done, she feels more control in her life and thus feels secure. And just an example on the repayment, the losses on this project. So far, up until 2 years ago, there were about 97.6% repayment, which is fantastic. And then the last group lending they did, all the farmers repaid their loans. They had 100% repayment. So I think that's fantastic. So my second example is a project that shows women building resilience in their country of Guatemala. Since 2007, the Rotary Club of Victoria Harborside in Canada is collaborating with the Rotary Club of Antigua in Guatemala and their partner, Namaste Foundation, to empower over 300 women entrepreneurs. The partner, Namaste, has been in operation in Guatemala since 2004, that's 20 years, and has helped nearly 10,000 women with microcredit, combining personal mentorship, financial literacy, and customized loans to help them formalize their business models and their finances, allowing for increases in profit. Like other countries, COVID had a major impact on Guatemala. The number of people facing hunger doubled doubled, reaching 1.2 million in June of 2020. Microcredit clients also suffered business and personal losses. In September of 2020, the Rotary Clubs of Victoria, Harborside, and Antigua set up a project with the assistance, that's a second project, with the assistance of Namaste and the Rotary Action Group for Community Economic Development, or RAGCED, raising almost $22,000 to provide microloans, averaging about $395 each to support 55 women enrolled in this project. And as the economy has grown over the past 2 years, the women entrepreneurs are rebuilding their businesses and paying their loans. Another success story is Elda on the right. Her husband died unexpectedly in 2019, leaving her in a dire financial situation without savings or any security. Her tienda, or store, that she had for 10 years was not profitable, and the pandemic only worsened her economic situation. She then heard about the Rotary Namaste project and asked if she could join. And together with her business advisor from Namaste, they worked closely together to make a budget and a business plan. And they set up a system to try and make her business more competitive. And based on the business plan and the new system, Ella started making home deliveries, which quickly resulted in increased sales and increased profits. Then tragically in 2021, her daughter died of COVID. Ella was then forced to provide for her daughter's 3 children. But with the consistent emotional and economic support from Namaste and Rotary that was being provided to her locally, she continues to be successful in her business. And as of last year, her profits had increased by 145%. Fantastic. So what I'm going to do now is turn it over to Dan. So let me stop sharing. There.
Excuse me, Jim, real quick before Dan gets started, a quick reminder to everyone, we have a chat, and if you have, we'll have a question and answer session after the speakers all make their presentations. And so I encourage you to enter any questions you have into the chat box, and we'll try to answer every one of them. So.
Okay, thank you, Carl. So to continue with the second portion of this segment, I'm going to turn it over to Dan Murray to speak about the other forms of lending used in our program called the Honduras Economic Community Development Program, or HACD. Dan, if you could share your screen.
Thank you, Jim. Now, can you see my screen?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and you can you see my screen?
Not yet, quite.
Not yet.
All right, thank you. All right.
Okay, very good. So before I introduce Dan to you, I want to mention that I've been involved with this program since 2013, and Rotary has provided over $2.5 million to the various phases implemented since inception. So this multi-year, multi-phase program was the vision of a past district governor from District 5360 in Canada, Steve Ricard, who is the founding chair of RAGCED. Back then it was called RAGAM, the Rotary Action Group for Microcredit. But you'll hear from Dan the positive impact this program has had. Now, so to formally introduce Dan to you, he is the president and chief executive of Opportunity International Canada, joining them in 2018. He brings a diverse leadership background in the charity, business, and public sector sectors. Throughout his career, Dan has developed a solid track for leading organizations to substantial growth through implementing operational efficiencies, developing necessary systems, and cultivating a healthy culture. Motivated by his faith, he is committed to furthering Opportunity International's impact and is passionate about seeing transformation in marginalized communities. Dan, it's all yours.
Thank you, Jim, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's such an honor to be a part of this webinar, and a delight to be sharing about the partnership that Opportunity International Canada and Rotary have shared over the past decade or so. It truly has been a transformative partnership, as I hope you'll see as we complete this presentation. I'm just going to start with just a quick high-level overview of Opportunity International for those of you that aren't aware of our organization. We started over 50 years ago primarily within the sort of microfinance space, and our mission has always been to create the conditions for micro-entrepreneurs to build their own opportunity, to create jobs, to create a small micro business so that they can provide a better future for their families. And so what you see here is really our global theory of change. Opportunity Canada is part of a global network of other Opportunity Internationals. Largely, we are also focused on women clients. As you know, that's where change really begins if you're going to reach the family. We focus also on climate resilience and a real focus on digitalization, digital services, and innovation. If you look at the sort of final far right side of the theory of change, the goal is always pathways out of poverty through sustainable livelihoods. And so that's what we hope to achieve. The core activities really is mobilizing finance, and that would be loans and savings. And then there's building capacity, helping local partners have the training they need, technical assistance they need, as well as strengthening local networks. So that you can see there's quite an overlap between how we do our work and RAGCED, and I think it really is a partnership that is almost made in heaven. Our core programs, we've sort of broken it down into micro enterprise, which is really a catch-all for the wide range of initiatives that individuals can come up with to provide a living for their family, whether that's operating a small store or a beauty salon or a small little taxi service. Really, there's no limit to the opportunities there. And so it's a broad base of economic development opportunity that benefits from microfinance. But also, if you take it within particular sectors, education, agriculture, and health, the principles of microfinance can go deep in an individual sector and bring about really significant change. And we've seen that in those three sectors. And then finally, graduation is a model that you'll be familiar with, but it's almost pre-microfinance. It's investing in people at the very bottom of the economic pyramid who would never even be in a position to take a microloan, but if we leave them alone, they're trapped in poverty. So by investing in development, skill sets, small assets, they're able to start small enterprises and begin to move forward with their families. So that's just a quick overview of how we work. When it comes down to the actual financial component of this, it's small loans, as Jim talked about, savings. We're also involved in village savings and loan, as well as savings with our partners. We innovated microinsurance as a way to build resilience in the lives of our clients. And training is absolutely essential. You can't just give loans. You'll end up creating indebtedness. You really need to come alongside the clients we're trying to serve and give them the skills and resources they need to build a livelihood and a better future. It works, as Jim mentioned, through a number of different methodologies. One of the traditional original forms of microfinance was what we call trust groups, where there's no collateral. The collateral is the guarantee of each member in the group. And we're still doing that in some countries. I just returned from a little over a week in Nicaragua, where this is still the primary model there, and it's proven to be quite successful. The repayment rates are very high because the community selects the members of the group, and if one member can't make a loan payment, everyone else has to pitch in. So you can imagine just the social pressure on individuals to make sure they're holding, carrying their weight. But also, as Jim mentioned, we will do individual loans, and we invest in SME, or we call micro SME clients. And you could look at it as kind of moving up the pyramid a little bit of, starting with people trapped at very low levels of poverty. And as they begin to succeed, it still looks like poverty, but it's what you might call the working poor, the They've started to build a bit of a future, $3-4 a day of income. But the wonderful thing about investing in SME clients is not only are they building a better future for themselves, they begin to create jobs for their neighbors. And a colleague of mine often said that not everyone's an entrepreneur, but everyone needs a job. So as we invest in these entrepreneurs, we create the conditions for community economic development. Just a quick look at Opportunity International's global impact, and this isn't just Opportunity Canada, we're part of this story. But in 2022, we saw about 18 million clients within the ag sector. Cumulatively, there's been almost $630,000 of loans dispersed. Last year, there was about $2.7 billion of capital that was catalyzed. 97% of our clients globally are female. We can see that we've addressed about 10 sustainable development goals. Within the education finance initiative, cumulatively, we've helped over 38,000 schools provide better education to about 10.7 million kids. This opportunity in Honduras, as was mentioned by Jim, was the brainchild of Steve Ricard out of Calgary. And you can see a picture of him on the right there, and you can see Jim on the left. And this is a project that's been going for over 10 years and has been truly transformative. And I could, as you look at the really overriding objective of RAGCED, which is creating opportunity by investing in communities, it's such a direct overlap with the mission of Opportunity International. And this partnership, often we go much farther by partnering, and this partnership has proven to be transformative. And what I think is beautiful about it is that it's not just a one-time thing. It was a vision over 10 years to bring lasting and transformative change that would be felt at a national level. So the project is in the country of Honduras, and when you look at the overall impact of the 10 years, partnering with a local microfinance institution known as IDH, which is an acronym, really stands for the Institute for Economic Development in Honduras. IDH was a small and struggling microfinance partner back in 2012 when this project was started. The current CEO had just started. He'd been called back to help turn the organization around. And at that time, they didn't know if they were even going to survive. The board wondered if they were calling him in to sort of fix things up, to sell it, or to close it down. And it was just at the same time that Rotary and Opportunity International decided to join forces and come alongside this small and struggling microfinance organization. Over those 10 years, as Jim mentioned, over $2.5 million US was raised and deployed. The funds were used for a number of different things. A good portion of the funds went into the loan portfolio. And Rotary did a fabulous job of tracking the deployment of those loans. They would, with each phase, they would want to see the list of who got the loans, how much the loans were for, what they were used for, when they were paid back, who then got the loan the second time and the third time. So they would follow it through 3 loan cycles. Funds were also made available to help with capacity building. And as a result, there were 2 new branches in the country that were entirely funded through this program. In parallel, because of the holistic nature of the Economic Development Initiative, there were a number of small rural villages without access to quality water. And so it was a non-Opportunity International project, but it was something that Rotary was still quite engaged in parallel and kind of wrapped into the HECD project, where there were at least 3 sustainable water projects implemented in some rural villages. And as I mentioned, the expanded loan portfolio, which included ultra poor and small to medium sized enterprise clients. The direct impact, which is measured by those that received the loans and their family size, was almost 6,000. But as I mentioned, a number of the SME clients also created jobs for their neighbors. I remember the first time I visited in 2019, we met with a gentleman who had started a small shoe factory, and he started all by himself, but by the time we met him, he had 11 employees. So not only was his own family being provided for, but 11 other families were as well. So the multiple is actually quite a bit larger than 5,800, and that's what happens when you invest in entrepreneurs. They tend to grow and to help around them. This has been a partnership that is truly deep and international. It has been with Rotary clubs throughout Canada, Rotary International, as well as Rotary clubs in Honduras. And so it's an amazing multinational partnership that has brought transformation in one country. In 2019, John Gilvesi, who's actually on, I think you're out there, John, it was good to see your name. That's John kind of in the middle. We're at the Puerto Cortez official opening, one of the branches that was funded by Rotary. On the far right side is Francisco. He's the CEO of our partner IDH. That's the mayor of Puerto Cortez, and then that's myself on the far left. A bit of a ribbon cutting ceremony as we were opening that branch. Just a quick, this slide I think you'll find quite interesting. This is our partner IDH and what their journey has looked like over the 10 or 12 years that we've been doing this project. And I think what's really interesting is if you look back at the portfolio chart, and you can see the size of their portfolio in Honduran currency, it's equivalent of about $2.5 million back in 2012. And as of the end of 2023, it was at $53 million. And that is money directly invested in the lives of those trying to work their way out of poverty, those who are providing jobs for their neighbors. And it's clients who would not have access to formal banking services. So this organization that we've partnered with is such a key element in helping achieve the economic development goals that I think Steve Ricard had when he set the vision out over 10 years ago. It's interesting, if you look at the bar chart, you can see the impact of COVID in 2020, but this shows their growth. And even in 2020, they did manage 8% growth. What's interesting is, as I said back in 2012, this organization was on the verge of collapse, and they thought they were going to have to shut things down. Certainly the leadership of Francisco played a very key role, but he's the one that provided this slide. And if you note the little bottom line there, it says a key factor in their success is that Opportunity International Canada and Rotary have accompanied IDH throughout their journey. So our partnership is not the only reason they've succeeded, but it's played a significant role. And as he said, significant encouragement for them, especially through some very dark and difficult times over the last decade. A couple of client examples. This is Jessica. She has a small beauty salon that she has in her house. The house is a very simple concrete block structure. I believe actually it was a Habitat for Humanity home. John, you'll remember visiting this client in 2019. And Jessica, she's a classic story of a single mom. She'd been working since she was 15. She actually learned the trade by working as a maid at a salon, and that salon owner kind of took her under her wing. And when she was able to get access to a loan, as an individual loan, she bought the necessary startup equipment, such as a hair dryer, various other, nail polish and other elements to start a beauty salon. She told us that she will often set up shop on a beach during festival seasons and do hair and whatever on the beach. She'll do whatever she needs to do to earn a living. And of course, she's delighted that she can provide for her daughter, make sure her daughter's going to school. And the other thing that she offered without even being asked, we didn't even think about it, but she told us that several of her friends had decided to join one of those migration caravans to head to the US and look for better opportunity. And they had invited her to come along. And she said she was so proud to tell them that she had no need to join them because she had her own small business and was able to provide for her family. I had the privilege of being in Honduras again at the beginning of this year, in the first week of January, and our partner IDH had just opened another branch in Marcala, which is a bit of a mountainous area not too far from Tegucigalpa, the capital, and it's in a coffee growing region. And this is an example of a small to medium enterprise loan client, Douglas, and he's the owner of a multi-generational small coffee farm. It's been in the family for about 100 years, but it's very difficult to make a living from it. It's just, so many challenges. But he was able to acquire a loan when the new branch in his community started up, and he had not been able to access any kind of financial support within the formal banking system. So it's what we would call a micro SME. And he was delighted to tell us that the loan that he took out, and I've just got a couple of pictures here. You can see the coffee beans. There's Francisco again, and I've got myself in the shot, and there he is with his wife and daughter. And he told us that he was really struggling. They had a small area where they could process the beans. It was impossible for him to get any kind of capital to move forward. But when he was able to acquire a loan, I believe of about $8,000, he used it immediately to buy a small lot of land to expand his operations, to pay the workers who did the renovations on the land. He bought fertilizer for his farm, and this packaging that he was able to get at the last minute, which actually facilitated an export opportunity of his coffee to Germany, and they won some international awards with their coffee. We were delighted to bring back a couple of pounds of this stuff, and it's apparently, somewhere in Germany they'll pay $100 a pound for this. So it's amazing what just a small little bit of financial assistance and training has done for this micro enterprise. He told us that it would have been impossible to grow his business without the access to these loans, and he's really so grateful for the support, the training, the walking alongside that he's experienced, and he knows he's going to be able to provide a better future for not only his family, but a number of local families, because he is creating jobs as well. So, as I mentioned at the start, this is a partnership. It's a deep partnership. Rotary, Opportunity International, Rotary clubs across Canada have been incredibly generous in funding the various stages. Rotary International, the Rotary Foundation has matched most of those. Even the government of Canada got involved along the way. And then, of course, the Rotary clubs in Honduras that have been a critical part of the partnership here. Together, we have, I think, over the last decade, truly brought about community economic development in the country of Honduras that is helping far more than we think. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share.
Dan, thank you very much. And so at this point, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Margaret Williamson. And Margaret is going to describe a different type of a program, this one being in the United States. So Margaret, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Carl, and good day to everyone. I'm going to talk about Launch Detroit. And Launch Detroit was created in 2012 by Rotary District 6400, and it strives to develop successful entrepreneurs, especially women, who have limited access to financial and business resources. Launch Detroit is a multifaceted program that includes many of the things that you've heard Jim and Dan speak about. And those are business education and training, micro loans up to $2,500, a mentor from the business community, networking opportunities. Our mission is to support and develop entrepreneurs and small businesses located in under-resourced communities in the Detroit region. Bob Fiolkowski, a past president of the Rotary Club of Dearborn in Michigan, has served on the Launch Detroit Committee for 10 years. Bob will share the orientation presentation that we give to new entrepreneurs. It is a comprehensive overview of the Launch Detroit program. And it this time, Bob, I'll turn it over to you to share the orientation that our new entrepreneurs undergo. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret, and thanks to the RAGCED group to having invited us. Let me pull up my PowerPoint. There we go. Can everyone see that?
No, not yet.
Bob,
Not
can
yet.
you share your screen?
Oh, that was what I didn't do. I apologize. I should have done it. Uh,
So the chat box, you see a share screen
Yeah.
option on Zoom. Just click on that and share your screen.
I'm sorry.
You see a chat
there it is.
option at the bottom, just next to that. Yeah, perfect.
Do you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, let me see if I can.
Can you just maximize your screen? Perfect.
All right, is that fine? Can you see that?
Yes.
Looks
And
good.
there's no other stuff obstructing it. I had some background stuff that's gone.
It's fine.
Okay, thank you. Well, again, thank you for allowing me to talk about Launch Detroit. When Margaret and I met regarding this webinar, we discussed what would be the best way to inform people about Launch Detroit. And we hit on the fact that we've got an orientation for our new cohort of entrepreneurs coming up later, actually Saturday of this week. And we thought that telling you about Launch Detroit, a good way to do that would be to have us go through the orientation process and the orientation PowerPoint. Gamasi has a copy of this, and if any of you would like to have a copy of this PowerPoint, you're welcome to it. You're welcome to use any of the slides, any of the ideas for anything that you're doing. So let's get on with it. When we meet our group of entrepreneurs, and we'll talk about how they come on board, but when we meet them for the orientation, the first thing we do is, of course, welcome them, and we introduce everyone there. We give our entrepreneurs an opportunity to talk at this point about their business. Some of them are seasoned businesses, some of them are business ideas, but we give them full reign to be able to talk about that. And then they also get to meet the Launch Detroit board members and those board members that will be mentors for the program. We then go through the agenda. We talk basically about what is Rotary itself, what is Launch Detroit. We talk about our Launch Detroit cohort model, which is the group model that we use that's evolved over the years. We then let the entrepreneurs know what they can expect from Launch Detroit and what's expected of them. And then we also have a presentation during the orientation from International Strategic Management, which is our education and coaching program. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through. Finally, then we ask for any questions. The group then begins its process of deciding how and when they're going to meet and what that's going to look like. So we begin the orientation by talking about what is Rotary and who are Rotarians. And this is, I don't want to say it's cursory, but we don't take a lot of time with it because we invite our entrepreneurs to visit the Rotary International website so they can learn more about it. But we do talk about the fact that we are a 46,000 member group with over 1.4 million members. We talk about service above self and how important that is to Rotary. We also spend some time with the four-way test so that they understand our moral and ethical backgrounds. And then when we're talking about Rotary International, we talk about the overarching global mission of Rotary, which is the elimination of polio. This gives our new entrepreneurs, many of them who are very unfamiliar with Rotary itself, at least a look at to see what the scope of the organization is that they're getting involved with. We then move to what is Launch Detroit itself, and we talk about here are four elements that make for the hopefully the success of our entrepreneurs. You've heard about these being mentioned already today, but we'll go over them again. In fact, in our orientation, we cover these four items many times and we expand on them. We repeat them. One of the things that I learned a long time ago was that if you want someone to learn something, you keep telling them the same thing over and over until they say, I've got it, I've got it. And then you tell them one more time. So hopefully, by us repeating and expanding on these four items, which are business education, professional business mentoring, networking, and access to a business loan, that our entrepreneurs will learn what they're getting into and what they have to do to be able to become successful in our program. As Margaret told you, Launch Detroit was created in 2012, and we're part of the Rotary District 6400, which covers southeastern Michigan, USA, and southern Ontario, Canada. To date, we have served over 98 different entrepreneurs in our programs, hopefully empowering them to move forward in business. I'll ask you to focus, if you will, just for a second on the gentleman in the middle photograph, Mr. Levi Johnson. He was in our first class in 2012, and with working with his mentor and with Launch Detroit, he's a producer of a sauce. It's a barbecue sauce. And he is now in 180 stores rather, for one of our largest chains in the area called Myers. So he's actually done very well on the program. The Launch Detroit program is now based on what we call the cohort model. This is a model that we are using now. It's not the original model for Launch Detroit. We had a very individual model beginning with our first class. And in our first group of entrepreneurs, I believe there were 12 entrepreneurs in that group. And they each had an individual mentor that they worked with. Probably the biggest difference between that model and the model we use now is that now the group functions as a group together, as a cohort, if you will. And the mentors work with all the people in the group as opposed to being one-on-one. So let's talk a little bit about how people get involved in the program. We have a website, launchdetroit.org, and potential entrepreneurs can go to that website and fill out an application. The application is year-round. They can fill it out at any time. There's no deadline for filling out applications. But twice a year, the board of Launch Detroit reviews which applications that we have. Typically, we see 50 to 60 applications every year. And so we generally visit them twice, which means we create 2 cohorts a year. Ideal size for a cohort is between 7 and 10 entrepreneurs. So with all the applications that we get, there is a certain amount of culling that has to go on so that we can determine who we feel will probably work well in the program and have some success. But those entrepreneurs then that we do choose are invited to attend the orientation, which we're at right now, and they meet each other in their cohort for the first time at the orientation. So there is a point during the orientation, a little bit later on, where they not only get to meet each other, but to get to talk about how they want to move forward as a cohort. Our pillars of success, and we talked about them already in terms of elements in the program. Educational element. When we began the program in 2012, and probably going for 6 or 7 years, we did an education program where all of our entrepreneurs were in a single classroom, and they each had the goal of the curricula was to have them complete a business plan. Well, we still want our entrepreneurs to complete a business plan, but we do it differently now. We use a company called ISM, or International Strategic Management. And by the way, I noticed Faris Alami, who's the president and CEO of ISM, is in our audience today. I want to say hello to him because he's worked with us very well over the last 4 or 5 years. But the new approach that we use is that each entrepreneur in the program is assigned a coach educator, and that coach educator works with them to complete their business plan or to do whatever it is they need to do education-wise to get them to the next level. That begins with a assessment that's done between the coach educator and the entrepreneur, and then the classes last approximately 6 months. As I said, the goal is to make sure that they have an active business plan. One of the reasons we switched to this type of a mode is that we found that many of our people coming in, not many, all of them coming in, were at different places in their business. Some people had businesses that were 10 years old. They had a business plan and they were working on that. Some entrepreneurs come into the program with a business idea and not much more. And so they need to develop a business plan. So the business plans developed for a new entrepreneur and for a seasoned entrepreneur are very different. And this is one of the reasons we went to the individual process. Mentors, Rotary clubs in District 6400 provide the mentors, business mentors for our group. Typically, there will be at least 2 business mentors who attend each of the meetings that the cohort has. And they can also take part in individual meetings and arrange them with individual entrepreneurs. I'll talk a little bit more about the mentors and some of their role in a while. Networking is extremely important in terms of business connections. And we not only encourage our cohort members to establish networking between each other, but we use Rotary clubs in District 6400 to be a part of the networking that is necessary for them to move forward in their entrepreneurial efforts. And then loan capital is available. There is a loan of up to $2,500 per entrepreneur available. That loan is repayable in 1 year's time with monthly payments at a 5% interest. We'll talk a little bit more about how people qualify for that loan because it's not an automatic situation. So we move to what entrepreneurs can expect specifically from Launch Detroit. And we talked about this, the goal-centered online business training program, mentors involved with the entrepreneur cohort from intake through goal achievement, access to a network of Rotarians, and an opportunity to network their business and services through the Rotary Network. We've recently started a speakers bureau of graduates from the Launch Detroit program who can be a part of programs at each of the Rotary clubs in District 6400. So they sign up for that and then they can be a part of their program. And then, of course, low interest business loans of up to $2,500. I said we talk a little bit more about mentorship, and it's important that our Rotary clubs help us with mentors for the program. One of the reasons we went to a group program as opposed to the individual program was with the individual program, we had a mentor assigned to each entrepreneur. As the number of entrepreneurs grew and grew and grew, it become much more difficult for us to find individual mentors for them. So we went to a group model where two or more mentors meet in the cohort groups, and they function as mentors for that entire group. The group can also ask for assistance in given areas, and we use Rotary mentors to help with that. For instance, we had a group that wanted to be able to do, and then wanted to learn more about how they could effectively market their program, their products. So we went through Rotary and found an expert in marketing who then served as a temporary mentor, came and did a presentation on the program. Likewise, we did something with a mentor that had expertise in social media, came in and did a presentation on things like Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and not just how to use them, but how to optimize them for their business growth. So our mentors can be either general mentors connected to the cohort, or one-time mentors that work with special projects. Networking. We assist our cohort members with networking between each other, and it's interesting to see as they work together, and let's say they meet and then 2 weeks later they meet again, all the new networking pieces that they found and how they share with each other. So it's a very important piece. And of course, then we also use Rotary as a networking agent. The business education services, we've talked about them. Financial institution partnership is another important piece that we do. Many of the entrepreneurs come to us. Some of them have bank accounts, personal bank accounts. Some of them don't. Some of them do all their business either in cash or in individual drawn checks. So we work with a bank in our area called Level One that helps with getting our entrepreneurs getting their bank accounts set up, working with them so that they have a banking institution that they can work with. And then even after they've graduated, if you will, from the program, they've got a financial institution that they can work with. We assign Rotarians throughout District 6400 to talk about the progress of the cohort and the progress of Launch Detroit. That connected with the fact that Launch Detroit entrepreneurs can do their presentations at Rotary meetings helps not only support the business, but it helps Rotarians to become more active in a program that we're doing. And then cohort membership participation. And this is in the piece where we talked about the Speakers Bureau, and we invite members of the cohort to talk at Rotary clubs. So what's expected of entrepreneurs in the program? We've talked about what we can do for them, but we want to talk about what's expected for them. The first thing, the most important thing, is that as an entrepreneur joins the program, they commit to being a part of the cohort or the cohort group. And that cohort is a group of like-minded people with similar social and economic conditions who live in proximity to each other. In the Detroit area, we feel that 5 to 10 miles apart is still proximity. We know that that's probably not true anywhere else, in many other places in the country or the world, but it seems to work well for us. The members of the cohort agree to support each other and create a supportive environment for each other. This is probably the most important part of the cohort group, is that they are self-governing. The group sets its meeting dates and times. It sets its agendas. The cohort decides whether they're going to have a structured cohort, one with a chairperson, one with a secretary, or whether they're just going to decide each week or each meeting time on their next agenda. We encourage that the cohorts set meeting dates about 2 weeks apart, but certainly no more than a month apart. it's important for them to keep in touch with each other throughout the time. We also find that the cohorts meet with each other individually in between their cohort meeting times. The cohort and the Launch Detroit board members approve the loan requests when they're made. So we're going to talk a little bit about the loan request and condition. Each entrepreneur, once they've completed the education portion and have a business plan, is eligible to request a loan. The loans can be up to $2,500. And they need to make a presentation to their cohort and to the board of the Launch Detroit in order to get that approval for the loan. Once they have approval for the loan, it's issued to them. A payment plan is set up for them so that they make the loan payments within 1 year's time at 5% interest. An interesting piece, and I think other people are learning the same thing about some microloan situations, is that not everyone who comes into our program requests a loan. And in fact, over the last 3 cohorts, we've given out, I think, 4 loans as a total, and that's probably out of 20 people that have been in those cohorts. And it's not because we're denying them the loans. And in fact, everyone who's applied for a loan in the last 3 cohorts has received it. It's because our entrepreneurs realize that they've come into the program and they find support in other ways so that they don't have to take on the burden of a loan. They find support in the mentoring that they get, in the networking they get, and in the business education that they get. But when they are ready, they can take that loan. When a person completes their loan repayment, if they've done it in a timely fashion, they are eligible for another loan. And we have a number of entrepreneurs who have taken out a second loan, and 1 or 2 entrepreneurs who have actually taken out a third loan. The idea behind the loans, though, is also that it builds their credit so that they can go to larger institutions of lending to get larger loans if they need them. At this point in the orientation, we ask the CEO and president of Strategic Management, International Strategic Management, Faris Alemi, to come and talk to the cohort. And what he does is he describes the curriculum that they'll be involved in for the next, I do think they do 7 sessions, 5-month period. What's next? At this point in the orientation, this is the final step in the orientation. We we encourage the cohort to get together to talk about how they want to structure their meetings, how they want to meet, when they want to meet, what they want those meetings to look like. They set the date for their first meeting. They're given information on when the coach instructor will be in touch with them to start the but the assessment process for education. And that's how things get started. At this point, then we ask our cohort if they have any questions, and we're happy to answer them for them. That's the orientation presentation. I'm going to turn it back over now to Carl. I think it's Carl. And then I think Gomati is going to moderate the questions for that you may have. So thank you for your attention today.
Bob, thank you very much. This is Carl Tree11 again, and I will moderate the questions. Just as a quick reminder to everyone, please use the chat box, and if not that, then use the control to raise your hand, and we'll answer them. So we have a number of questions already here. The first one is on the subject of education, and to our panel, what role do you see education playing in microfinance that makes it different than, say, many of the commercial microfinance institutions are able to provide? In other words, how your programs distinguish yourselves in that regard.
Well, if I may, we just finished talking about our relationship with a education program. We've found that some of our entrepreneurs come through the program, take advantage of the education, and then quite frankly, don't feel they need anything else. They think that was what they needed. We find them coming back at some point as well. But the education is a very important piece. It's why we changed from a education that was the same for everyone to an individual model where we meet each person with their individual needs and help them get those educational needs. So education is an extremely important part.
Okay. Anyone else on the panel want to add to that?
Certainly, from the perspective of Opportunity International, I'll answer it kind of in two ways. The first is the education of our clients, and training and education on basic things like financial literacy, how to run a business, is absolutely critical in the process of taking on a micro loan, because otherwise you're often just left with indebtedness. So our goal is that the clients thrive and succeed, and that they can fully deploy the capital to generate a sustainable livelihood. So educating clients is critical, but we've also entered the education sector. Like, education as a pathway out of poverty is huge. For children to acquire a quality education is a massive step on the journey out of poverty. And we got into it quite by accident. I think around 2008, a client walked into a branch in Ghana and asked for a loan to start a business. So the business they were starting was a small, low-fee, non-state school in an area that was underserved. And that school thrived and created education opportunities for many kids in the community. And that was the birth of our education finance initiative, which I said has now cumulatively provided a quality education for almost 11 million kids. So education is vital as a journey out of poverty.
Anyone else?
Carl, maybe if I can just add to that.
Sure.
I'll leave the more formal education with somebody like Dan who runs that national microfinance institution. But yes, I mean, financial literacy, trying to put together a business plan, cash flow projections, that's very important. But I think something too that we can't forget about is mentorship from local Rotarians. We have Rotary clubs that are involved with these projects, and we have a number of people within the clubs that have certain skill sets, and working with the clients, utilizing their skill sets. That's a form of education that we can't forget about.
Very good. Related to that is mentoring, and the argument that mentoring, especially by Rotarians, could have a distinguishing impact on that. Panel, what are your thoughts on that? The role of mentoring.
Well, I guess I started with saying mentorship is very good, and just the fact that the client knows that there's somebody there that they can reach out to. Yes, we suggest that that group lenders, the clients form a support group. Could be 5 or 6 clients, so there's somebody to reach out to. But a mentor, it could be a Rotarian, or it could be somebody from within the community that has a certain skill set on business, somebody that they can reach out to, somebody that will listen to them, listen to hear their problems, and provide some good concrete suggestions at the end of the conversation.
I would concur that mentorship is absolutely vital on this journey where you're trying to build a sustainable livelihood, and maybe you're just starting out. We had a program with our partner in Ghana that was called a Women's Mentorship Program. It's still active, and they would form cohorts of around 300 people, and so each mentor would have 2 mentees, and it was a structured program over a good 6 months with a curriculum. And then there's a graduation ceremony. We've been through, I think, 3 or 4 cohorts, and many of the graduates then volunteer to become mentors, and they kind of move on and take on a couple of mentees. And we just saw these were, early single stage entrepreneurs who were partnered with women who had been running a successful business for a number of years, and those that networking then continues organically after the program officially wraps up. The relationships last for life. So just as you have access to mentoring opportunities wherever you live that has made it possible for you to succeed in your business, it's exactly the same requirement in the countries where we serve.
Yes, and I'd like to add that as far as mentors are concerned, the feedback I've gotten from the entrepreneurs we've worked with at Launch Detroit is that it's helped to build their confidence, to know that there's someone that they can call or turn to if they face an obstacle or a challenge or have a question. And so they found it to be empowering as well as a way to build confidence in themselves.
A question has been raised about are there any data on the lifespans of the various businesses that have received loans in the different programs you've seen? Anything you can share on that?
I don't know, Dan, maybe from OIC's perspective, say using EDH as an example, any clients there that you can think of?
Yeah, I mean, each of our partners, again, we work with microfinance institutions. We've started many of them over the years, but then over time they've migrated and become regulated financial bodies. And they keep very detailed records, of course, of their client base and history. It's not just a bank, it's really a partner. And the loan officers are often called relationship officers, and they're out in the community working with those people. As far as data, I don't actually have my hands on it. I know it's there. It's actually a really good question. And I think I'll go back to our program team and see if we could maybe assemble a bit of a historical picture of that. But anecdotally, I've been privileged in the last 5 years to meet. I can think of a couple of clients in 2 different cities in Ghana that have been partnering with with the bank there for over 20 years, and they could name every one of the loans they had and what they used them for, and they talked about their kids going through university and becoming pharmacists and whatever. And so there's definitely there's a good longevity for many of the partners. Not everyone obviously makes it. So that would be really really interesting information to try and compile together.
Any other thoughts on that? One of our participants has asked for the URL for the website for Launch Detroit. It's in the chat box. It's launchdetroit.org. And if anyone wants information on Dan's organization, Opportunity International, maybe we could put that in the chat box too, Gomothy. A question has been raised about typically the maximum size of loans that are given. It probably varies from organization to organization. What's your experience on this?
If you want me to start, although I'm not a MFI, but I can remember in 2013 when I first got involved with IDH in Honduras. The loans at that time, as I say, that's 11 years ago, was about $300 to $350 on average. And today, I'm going to go back to Dan on this, but Dan, I know we're doing loans there. You're doing some loans, SMEs of $5,000.
Yeah, that's
maybe
correct.
More.
It really depends on the local economy. I just got back from Nicaragua. I think the average loan size there is about $330. But I've seen loans historically as low as $50, $100 in certain contexts. So it's really about the scale of the business, what they're trying to start off with, and how much is appropriate debt. Group loans, when there's 10 or 15 people that are sort of collateralizing each other's loan, you might give the entire group, say $4,000, but then individuals within that group would get something appropriate to what they're trying to start off with. So it can range from as low as $50 or $100. Within the individual loan and group loan context, probably no more than about maybe maximum, perhaps in an economy like Honduras, of around $800 to $1,000 at the individual level, and the SME level, as Jim mentioned, can be as high as $5,000 or $6,000.
And I can remember going into Bangladesh, into an extreme poverty area, where the average daily wage was only 50 cents a day, and there, about the equivalent of $10 US could be a loan.
Question
So
been
again, it
raised,
all depends on the economy. It all depends where you are.
a question's been raised. Sometimes businesses that receive these types of loans fail. In your experience, what are the typical reasons?
Well, as has been mentioned, the repayment rate within the sector is quite high. It's well above 97%. People have this one opportunity, and they're determined to make the most of it. When businesses fail, and we've seen several examples, often it's due to situations outside their control. In Honduras specifically, where HECD is involved, we've gotten involved in some loan forgiveness situations where either hurricanes or floods completely wiped out the livelihoods of the entrepreneurs, and there was nothing that they could do to recover. And the intervention was done secretly, so that they didn't know that there were international people, sort of covering those loans off. But the sad reality is, if they can't repay the loan, and if the institution has to write those loans off, then the individuals also have to be reported to the local credit bureau, and it kind of ruins their ability to get credit in the future. So we've really felt in those situations where it was completely out of their control, that if we could find a compassionate way to pay off those loans secretly and then make additional loans available. That's been done selectively in a few situations. In other cases, it's just normal. They started a business, economic conditions, their own ability to run a business, it just didn't work. But what our partners will often do is they coach and they say, okay, this isn't working. What else can we try? So it's never give up. It's not about the financial return. It's about helping people bring permanent change in their own families and build a better future.
And I've seen loans being restructured, and which will greatly help. Yes, maybe it extends them longer than we want, but at the end of the day, it is successful, and it allows the client to work their way out of it.
That was done during COVID quite extensively, in fact.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I'd like to make a comment as well. At Launch Detroit, we've recorded every meeting we've had since 2012, and each month we receive a financial report. And I know Bob mentioned that now we don't make as many loans because the other parts of our program are just as valuable, if not more. But we started by offering business classes and giving each graduate a check for $2,500 when they completed the business education training. That's when we experienced bumpy roads. We got to like 17, 20% default. But that was prior to 2016. And we conducted an impact study so we could plug in the gaps and tighten our process. And so now we don't have those experiences. And in fact, we are still revolving funds that we started with in 2012 with additional funds for education and loans through our global grant that we received in 2016. So the cohort model has been very a successful way to tighten the loan process and not have defaults. So that's been our experience.
One of our participants has asked the question, how could he obtain a microfinance loan? Any recommendations or advice that you might offer to him or anyone else?
Yeah, it's a question I often get from colleagues who have family living in certain countries, and really, we don't issue the loans directly. We partner with we always work in partnership with local organizations, and so in the country where you live, it would be important to do a bit of research and find who is offering these kinds of services, and go visit them, and bring your business plan along. And most of them exist to help people who wouldn't have access to formal banking services, and to take a risk on them.
Any immediate thoughts on what to search for online?
Wow, that's a good question. One thing that's really important is the value system of the microfinance institution. Do they exist primarily as their mission to help people on journeys out of poverty, or are they have they found that the banking services as a poor is a good market, and their primary interest is financial return. That said, if the sector is to be sustainable, a financial return isn't a bad goal. And if you have a decent business plan, then you should be able to make your loan payments, and it can work. There's a differentiation between a loan shark and a microfinance organization with a heart. And in almost every country we operate, we hear from our clients that they've had, they do have opportunity for informal loans through loan sharks and other services, but the interest rates and are significantly higher. And but also there's no partnership, there's no training, and if you can't pay your debt, then it isn't so friendly, right? So microfinance is a broad sector. There are some good players, there are some bad players. Start with maybe the NGO sector, those that are primarily there because they're trying to help with economic development.
In your experience, what are typical interest rates on microfinance loans?
It's always a
Before that one is answered, maybe Carl, just let me, if I can interject quickly, just add on to Dan about, what do you approach? I mean, there are a lot of, and I just Google it, there are a lot of microfinance institutions out there, from the NGO level up to, I guess, well, probably just below a bank, but they're saying there's about 10,000 of them. So there are a number out there to try.
Very good. Gomati is put up here. For anyone who wishes to follow up with our presenters, we've got everyone's name and also their email address, so certainly feel free to contact them. A couple other questions we have out here. One is, has anyone...
Well, the interest rate one we didn't answer.
Yes, okay. Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you. Yes.
And I guess, and I'll make a quick comment, and maybe I'll turn to Dan, and then maybe Margaret or Bob on Launch Detroit. But again, it all depends where you are. The institutions look at cost of funds. There are microfinance institutions out there that will do, or organizations that will have some non-interest bearing loans that they will provide, but it's more categories. There are some of those, but again, I guess the economy, where you live, cost of funding, so it varies.
Very good.
Yeah, and this is always a tricky question. This is really a tricky question for people living in, in sort of more developed economies where interest rates might be, business loans might be 8-10% or something like that. It really does depend on the local economy, and I've seen interest rates sort of in the high teens all the way up into the high 40s, and that sounds crazy, right? But think of it this way: the local partner is not a charity. They are actually providing jobs. They have loan officers, they have audit requirements, all that sort of stuff, and so they need to generate enough income from their portfolio to pay the bills. And if they can't, then they won't exist, and then the opportunity to give those loans won't be there. I've always asked the clients, tell me about your partnership, and without exception, they always say, "Oh, I can't believe how low the interest rates are, and how helpful the partner is in helping us on our journey." And most of them have had experience with loan sharks, which are like I've heard 24% a month being charged, from loan sharks, and daily collections. Like you get a small loan and you're paying daily, and they don't take no for an answer. So it's a different subculture that we're trying to do. So sometimes there's this journey of explaining, how can you charge 35%? Well, we're not, but the partner has to in order to pay the bills. But nobody's making money on this. It's very expensive to provide banking services to the bottom of the economic pyramid as well. It's not just a loan, it's a whole coaching environment.
I don't know what they're doing right now, but I know 10 years ago when I was in Bangladesh and I visited Grameen Bank and I had a contact there, so I got in to speak to executives and I spent a whole day in their headquarters looking at their various portfolios, and they did have some portfolios that were no interest. They were non-interest, and they were doing loans to beggars. They were doing loans to students at no interest.
Yeah,
And
so
the example I talked about this morning, the farmers in Uganda, that was a 3-year loan, no interest, because they were donated funds through Rotary clubs, building up a pool. And because there's a great repayment happening, that pool exists and it's able to grow, and they're able to relend and relend and relend.
That's great.
What-
And yeah, Launch Detroit, our interest is not really interest. We call it administrative fees, 5%, just to cover whatever banking fees we experience. And so that's what we charge at Launch Detroit, no more than 5%.
One of our participants has asked a question about obtaining a microfinance loan for a microflush toilet. Anyone have any experience with something like that? And if not, where might you point that person?
I'm going to point that person to you, Carl, because I know you've been involved in a microflush project.
Yes, that's true. So
Sorry about that.
no, that's fine. I wanted to give someone else an opportunity, but yes, the person who did that, you'll see my name there, Carl Treelevin, and you're welcome to get in touch with me and we can address this further. Another question is some of our participants in Venezuela wondering what opportunities are there for microfinance at this time in Venezuela?
Good question. There used to be there was an NGO, and I can't recall the full name, but I see somebody on the call, Yves Lafontaine. Maybe you might know it, and because I think they're also they're doing some work in Peru, and then they went into Bolivia, and it's Mujeres something, MUJ, is it ERES? It's women. Mujeres is Spanish for women, and it was an NGO that provided funding. And I know they were in Venezuela once upon a time. I don't know if they're still there or not, but I can do some Googling on it and find out. The person that asked the question, you see my email address there. Reach out to me, and I'll see what information I can provide for you.
Chris Puttock, who put in the chat box, said that we can extend iRotary to collect data for microfinance projects. I was going to turn to him about that, but unfortunately he had to leave the meeting. Anyone else know anything about iRotary? Okay, well, we have time for just one last question. Anyone have anything in particular? Okay, well, we've covered a range of different topics, and as mentioned here, we've given the names and email addresses for all our presenters. We want to thank all of you for being part of this. Again, wanted to mention to you that we will have 2 more webinars coming up. The next one will be April 11th, and the target time is 9 a.m. Eastern time in the US. And our final session will be May 9th, also at the same time. And as we mentioned before, we have recorded this session and it should be available on YouTube beginning probably on Saturday. So thank you again to everyone, to our participants, and we encourage you also, besides following up with our educational material, is come to the RAGCED website, which is ragced.org, to learn more information. And at the same time, we encourage you to consider joining us as members in case you haven't already, because as I said at the beginning of the meeting, there are a whole range of different services that we can provide to you and your Rotary Club to help in all the different areas of community economic development. So thank you again, and let's adjourn the meeting. Everyone, have a good rest of your day.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.